Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Dreamcatcher podcast, a place where your dreams can find a voice. Energy is the invisible force that affects us all. And if we want to experience joy, love, abundance, and peace, we must prioritize our energetic health. Part of that self-care practice involves dealing with energetic blocks that lodge themselves in our systems in the form of negative emotions, beliefs, and even physical conditions. According to my guest, Oliver Nino, we are naturally wired to clear our energy field. He'll explain what it takes to get back to our healthiest state. Oliver Nino is an entrepreneur, energy healer, and spiritual activation expert. He has performed over 20,000 healing sessions and has trained 5,000 people from 50 countries in his energy healing methodology. Oliver, a highly esteemed energy healing expert, has amassed a loyal global following, including many celebrity clients like Nina Dobrev, Gwyneth Paltrow, Donna Karan, Demi Moore, Gerard, Butler, and Tony Robbins. During our conversation, Oliver will offer his advice on identifying and clearing out energy blocks we may have accumulated over the years. He'll also talk about protecting our energy from negative people and environments so that we stay in high vibration. If you like what you heard, please don't forget to like, rate, share, and subscribe to this podcast. Thanks. Hi, Oliver. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
I am doing great. Thank you. I appreciate you joining us to talk about all things energy, spiritual energy, that is. And you are very well experienced in this field, having done 20,000 healing sessions. So I'm curious, Oliver, why did you think it was the right time to share your knowledge in a book?
Because a few things, because I know it's one of the things that ultimately I want to have it done, and I wanted to shine my light. And it's always, with the journey and the path, it's always like, shine your light, and you always hit resistance at times. Because a lot of fear comes up with, you coming out of shining your light and doing your purpose work. Like, who will I lose? Will I be rejected? Will I be ridiculed? Right? And all those different things. Like, it's going to be tougher. So there's a lot of those things. So for me, it's a twofold. One, it was part of my personal growth to just shine my light more and really overcome a lot of the mental chatter and emotional chatter that's been going on. And the second part is I've always wanted to leave an impact and make a difference. I always wanted to. I look at the world and I look at the world that my children are going to inherit, and I was like, how can I impact that? So when they're growing up and as they're living here, it becomes a friendlier, more loving, more connected, better world. So I'm like, okay, a book's the way to do that, because it can be translated in different languages. It doesn't matter where you're from.
Like, and it can reach a lot more people because there are only so many healing sessions you can do, right? So
So for me, it was like, even though we have close to 4 million students online, it's not a dent.
4 million?
We have online, and it's not a dent to how many people are in the world. So for me, I'm like,
the population of a country,
right? So for me, I was just like, I just need to impact more people. So I need to write a book because one, it's time based on just the last few years that we've experienced as humanity. And I feel like it's a book that I wish I had growing up. And it's the book that I want to give to my kids as they grow up, because I never got that information, that knowledge,
Yeah, and I'm so glad you did it because this book is great. It's a real eye-opener, and I look forward to discussing some of the contents that you wrote in it with you today. But before we get into that, we want to get to know you a bit better, Oliver. You're known as the spiritual activator and a sacred geometry and energy activation expert. So take us back to when you discovered your gifts and how you developed them over the years.
Mine was by accident, honestly. I mean, back then I wasn't like, thinking like I'm going to open my gifts, because, my past was not in healing at all. So if you ask me, hey, are you going to be, a healer, I would have probably laughed, because I was knee deep into business. Like, I, back in the day, I started off with a dating advice company. Right. That's my first beginnings. Right. And I went into business, and every single time it was a growth experience, because the more you shine your light, here's my experience, right? At the very beginning, you hit these resistance, and you think the resistance points are external. You think, oh, it's the world, because like back then it was painful. Like, I had businesses to where business partners stole from me, like, employees stole, people bad mouth and all those different things, to where, you're like, why is the world unjust? Right. And it makes you want to shrink, and not realizing that those things are coming up because they may be your biggest lessons and teachers. Right. That it may be that there are energetic blocks passed on generationally that's still affecting you. So for me back then, I was just like, I wanted to, curl in a ball and hide in the cave, because when you experience a little bit of pain and darkness of like, of betrayal, you're like, you're wanting to do good, and then the opposite comes out. You're just like, screw this. Right. So for me, luckily I didn't stay in that space of like, rock bottom too long, because when you're there, you're like, okay, I'm here. There's nowhere else to go but up. So for me, it was like the intention of like, let me find myself, let me grow through this. That intention mixed with like, I was in Sedona, which is a sacred site, and there's lots all over the world, like, in Machu Picchu, Egypt, like in Stonehenge.
Energy vortexes, right? That's what.
Yeah. So I was there, and not knowing that when you're there with an intention and you're in a sacred site, it's like being in sitting on millions of crystals that just amplify everything. So what took, I don't know, people sometimes decades to do, it happened for me in days, because when I was in sacred sites, all of a sudden, all the things that I wasn't aware of, all the pain, all the things that I needed to release that was in my heart, that was attracting, business partners that were, of that vibration, or people that were of that vibration that would hurt me, they would all come up. And I would see them, and I'll be able to work through them and release them energetically. So for me, I didn't venture off doing spiritual gifting. I just knew that I had to release something was blocking me. That was my first thing, is I'm being blocked. I'm being weighed down by something. What is it? And in the process of me releasing that stuff, for some reason, my gifts started to activate, because I realized that they were always there. It's not like you didn't have your gifts as you were born. They're there. It's just that life happens, and then we close our hearts, and then we shrink, and then we don't want to be seen, and then we're afraid of stepping into who we are and what we're made of, and that causes our gifts to not even be not there, but it feels like it's inaccessible. It feels like it's a different world. But when you start purging and releasing all the things that aren't you, you quickly discover everything that you were born with, and all of a sudden it's like, where was that? Right. So for me, that was the case. As I had the intention, went on sacred sites, and I was just working on myself. Like, I released all those different things, and I didn't know the spiritual gifts would come. Back then, nobody was teaching spiritual gifts, so I don't even know what was going on. I thought I was just going crazy. For me, it was a little bit of a shock, because again, there was nobody to educate me on it. And then it got better over time, to where it's like, oh wow, these gifts are here to actually guide me through life. They can actually help me. They can actually help me with happiness, with purpose work, with clarity, with feeling peace, with knowing what to do, with feeling recharged, with being protected from negativity. And once I started seeing the benefits of it, I'm like, okay, like I got to go down this rabbit hole, because what I thought I needed in life, I didn't even know about. And this thing right over here that just popped out of nowhere is bringing me everything I've ever wanted. And I'm just learning about this, and no one's teaching it. So that for me started my journey down the rabbit hole of what is energy, what are spiritual gifts, how does it work, right? And how do we use them to enrich our day-to-day lives,
Interesting. And I'm wondering, did you see glimpses of your gift when you were a child? Because I know that when we're younger, we are more pure, right? We don't have all those energy blocks that we accumulate as we grow up. So did you see any hints of it?
Feeling. Because a lot of times when people have spiritual gifts, like their third eye is opening and all those different things, at the very beginning, it shows up differently. Some people are visual, and a lot of times people think visual is the only way to go. But it's not, right? Because it's a modality. It's a preference that we have energetically that some people can see, but it doesn't mean just because you can't see, it's not there. I'm more
there are others,
feeler.
right? There's auditory, kinesthetic.
Yeah. So people can see, can hear, can feel, can sense, can taste, can know. I was more of a knower and a feeler, to where I would feel it. Like, I would feel it, like, either goosebumps or knowing, or the hair in the back of your neck, and you just or this thing that comes over you, just something's going on. I could never figure out what it was. And then I had friends, of course, back in the day that could see, and they're like, yeah, this is what's going on. I'm like, oof, right? And I couldn't see, but I could feel. But I was in my mind, it was almost back then there was a lot of fear, because again, growing up, like, I watched a lot of horror movies, a lot. So I'm like, oh gosh, like, had the wrong perception of what energy was. And if I couldn't see it and I could feel it, I was just afraid of, like, what's going on? I can't see something, right? So it was just like, so I always had a little bit of, it was always there in the background. Now that I look back, it was there all my life. It's just, I never tuned in. I never knew what it was. I was afraid of it, and I was running away from it instead of understanding it and embracing it,
So I think that's why you feel that it's really, really important to work on our energy, because you've seen how it unraveled your own gifts.
And the thing is, to be honest, like, when I was starting out, it was not spiritual enlightenment that I was after, right? Because back then I was in the lows of the lows, like, going through heartbreak, I'm moving from another country, losing all my friends, right? Going in here, trying to immigrating to the US, trying to get a fresh start, getting some success, getting slapped down with, like, just the challenges that happen with the business, wanting to hide, trying again, getting slapped down. So for me, like, my goal wasn't even like, ooh, can I have enlightenment? Can I just feel a little bit more abundance? Can I just have more peace? Can I just experience more love?
And I think everyone at their core wants that.
Yeah. So those are my driving forces. And I just didn't know that, like, those spiritual gifts would guide me there faster than my mind could. All right. I just never knew all that stuff. I was just open to anything. I mean, gosh, it could have been something else that came along that worked, and I would have done that, because at that point I was just looking for anything that worked. And I've tried a lot of different things, and nothing just, like, seemed to work consistently, quickly, and when I needed it. So for me, I was just open to, like, God, higher power, universe, whatever, your listeners believe in. I was just like, I'm open, whatever you have for me, I'm gonna give it a shot. So for me, it was just that willingness.
And that is enough, right? Just having that consciousness to say, okay, I'm open to whatever you're gonna.
I think it's the most underrated thing is that, because a lot of times people don't realize the power of intention.
Yeah,
because it's not as sexy.
They feel like they've got to figure it all out, and I was one of those people, right? I was like, no, I have to get every detail. Like, I need to know how things are gonna go.
I'm left brain, very, very skeptical of very detailed spreadsheets. Data. That's me.
So you know how
right?
it goes.
So so for me, I think it's underrated because it's just simple. And a lot of times people think that if it's simple and easy, it must not work that well. They're looking for something new, right? But if you look at, for example, intentions, I'll give you an example. Prayer is a form of an intention. It's not the only form, but it's a form, right? And if you look at stories all over the world, and I actually have the story from, myself when I was born. But if you look at stories all over the world, you'll see it doesn't matter what the culture is, doesn't matter what the background is, doesn't matter what their beliefs are. There are people that are sick, that are, like, on their last, breath, and somebody's praying for them, and they're super, like, it's just like intently, and then something happens and they miraculously, like, are better, and doctors can't explain what it is. Right. And if you think about it, if you dissect it on all levels, that person that was praying, they didn't follow 77 steps, right? They weren't vision boarding it, right? They probably didn't even have, all of their traumas healed, or the mindset and the emotions that are super high. They're probably, like, I don't know, maybe fear-based, a little bit scared of fear of loss and all different things. But that's their human story. Right. But when you set an intention or a prayer, which is a form of intention, you're putting requests in from your soul, from your divine, from your higher self. It's put in a different frequency. Therefore, it happens quicker, and it doesn't follow the human laws of manifesting, which is human law. You gotta think about it, feel it, spend a lot of time with it, generate a lot of emotions, feel like you're there, all those different things, which works. It's a lot involved. Whereas there are things that you can do that put the requests at much higher frequencies and vibrations, where it's almost like you put it there and it happens even if you never think about it again, right? So a lot of times, and that's intention is one of them. And
can
a lot of times,
give us some example of that, how that works?
Right. So a lot of the times, like, my wife calls it set and forget it manifesting, to where I'll give you an example. Like, she was in an abusive relationship before she met me. And I remember she got into this altercation. The guy threw some wine in the glass. He missed her head. And like this whole thing. And I remember that night, she got on her knees, she kicked him out, got on her knees, looked in the mirror, and I was just like, God, I'm ready to release whatever's not supposed to be in my life anymore. I'm tired of this. I'm surrendering. I'm ready to release, and I'm ready for life to be beautiful. I'm paraphrasing, but somewhere in those terms. And 2 weeks later, like, we met, and everything
2
changed
weeks.
from there. But that 2 weeks. But if you think about that,
that was a powerful prayer.
Yeah,
so a lot of people wait for years for something like that.
Exactly. But the thing is, when you're getting it right, you're surrendering, right? You're surrendering your human story and baggage. You're giving space for a higher power to come in. And when that happens, things happen quickly. It's just that we want to control things at times, right? And it slows things down. And once we finally are out of options, then we try to surrender, and then it works. And we start thinking, like, it took so long to get it. No, it took so long to surrender. And when you surrendered, it happened faster, but it just took a long time to get there, because we had to play everything out in our mind first, right?
Right. And could it also be that energetic blocks might be getting in the way? Because you mentioned that in the book, that these blocks tend to lodge themselves in our system.
Yes.
So, I mean, could that also be slowing down the manifestation of what we want?
Absolutely. And here's the thing is, I realized that so here's the thing. It's interesting, but I look at things as vibration and frequency based, to where it doesn't matter what your past is. Like, a minute from now, you can experience a beautiful life. It doesn't matter if you have all the blocks, right? Let's say all your blocks exist. I look at it as a television metaphor. Let's say you're watching the horror channel. Everything you see in the horror channel is designed to produce fear. Like, the script, the music, the actors, the sound, everything, right? Everything there. Like, so when you're watching the horror channel, like, maybe 90 to 95% of what you experience are things that make you feel that way. And if you're looking for happiness, love, feel good stuff, you might get it in a little bit of doses, but it's not going to be what you're going to mainly get from that channel, right? And when you shift the channel to comedy or like something, the Christmas uplifting channel, then all of a sudden what you're seeing is everything there is meant to lift you up, right? So those two channels exist at every given moment. And there's several hundreds or thousands of other channels that exist. So because we can't see them, doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It's there. And when you tune into them, you experience a completely different reality, right? And my experience is that, yes, you may have blocks, sure, but there's a vibration that you can get to where your blocks don't exist, or they don't hold you back, right? Doesn't mean they never happen.
So we can bypass those blocks by tuning in.
So I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example. Over the long run, you want to clear them. But doesn't mean you can't experience.
In the long run. Yeah, but that doesn't happen overnight, right? That is a process.
That's the thing with vibration. Things can happen overnight, but you can go back to old vibrations if you don't.
Well, if they're around you, I'd imagine it would. But if you're doing it on your own. Look
at lottery winners. The lottery winners, when they win the lottery, like, they come in this windfall of abundance, right? And then they did studies 10 years later. Like 90 or 95% of them, I forget the number, like, are in a worse financial place than they did before winning. Now, if you think about it, that's 10 years of abundance, right? They won. They've experienced abundance that no people can in this world. Like, the very few do, right? Do you think they had the mindset? Do you think their traumas mattered? Their history, their blocks? It didn't until it did, right? Because they got into an energy of vibration to where they got it. energy got them there, right? And they were there.
Like fear and lack.
Yeah, but then somewhere along while they were there, something happened that caused them to tune into the old vibration. Therefore, all the blocks mattered again, right? All the limiting beliefs, all the trauma.
So it kind of activated those blocks. Is that a
yeah? Because some blocks are vibration based. Here's some examples. There are times in your life where you're there's some times in your life probably where everything in the past traumas are so real, you're feeling them, and it's just like it's like you're reliving every single one of them. And there's times in your life where you're the happiest, you're in ecstasy, and you're experiencing bliss that none of them, they don't even matter. You don't even think about it, not affecting you. You're just in that space, right? You're in a very different vibration. Yeah. So the way I look at it is, yes, at any given time, we have a lot of vibrations available to us. Some blocks are more real and are more apparent and hold us back at certain vibrations, where at certain vibrations, we have more resources to where they don't show up. Or if they do, they're like so small that we can like literally, it's just a breath and then we're over them, right? So it's not that life gets easier, is that we get stronger and we channel more light and we tap into higher resources to where the human story that we've experienced becomes so small in comparison to who we are and what we're tapped into, what we're made of, right? So it doesn't negate it, it doesn't discount it. It just makes it to where we're more resourceful based on what vibration we're on. Is that what I found?
And that's part of our self-care practice, to make sure that we stay in that high vibration. And that's why you say that we should be conscious of the environments and the people around us, because that can impact our moods, our stress levels, and happiness. So yeah, can you give us some tips on how we can be more mindful of that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the times at the very beginning is really doing a self check-in is what I call it, right? You're doing a self check-in and you're doing it to where you're like, okay, like how is your day-to-day emotions? Are there people that when you're around them, they just lower your vibration? Right? They lower your vibration, or they
the energy vampires.
Right. Yeah. And a lot of it is realizing that if you take a really good look in your life, you're going to realize that the things that drag us down, they're not random. There are very few repeatedly over and over and over again, right? That happen, like whether it's our coworker or something that we watch every single day, or a story that we relive, right? Or some negative self-talk we tell ourselves over and over again, and we don't realize that's not even our self-talk. We have absorbed it, but over time we think it's ours, right? So there's all these different things that if you look in your day and you trace everything, or maybe it's like you're sensitive to energy, and every time you walk into a mall and all of a sudden you're overwhelmed by everybody else, right? So what people don't realize is the things that lower our vibration, they're very predictable. Like, and they're not a lot, they're few, but if you look at them every single day and you realize these are the things that lower my vibration, and then it becomes as simple but not as easy to do at times, because what's simple sometimes not easy to implement, is minimizing the time we spend there and doing more of the things that the self-care practices that take care of our soul. Because, for example, let's say you're going with a coworker and you're meeting them every single day and they're just negative, right? So what can you do with that? If you don't do anything and you spend 50% of your day with them, then 50% of your day you're affected by negativity. That's a lot, right? 50%.
That is a lot.
It doesn't end with 50%. You take that home, and if you're not clearing it now you're bringing that to your sleep, or you're bringing that to your relationships, to your decision making, to your well-being, right? So now it's affecting your entire day. Versus like, okay, what are you doing? If that's a negative coworker, are you doing protective practices for your energy so that when you're there, you're not absorbing it? And more so than that, are you doing self-care throughout the day so you're elevating your vibration so that doesn't even affect you at all? And do you have other outlets, or parts of groups and communities, and you're learning stuff, and you're doing things to proactively focus your attention on higher vibrations? Then all of a sudden, if all you're focused on is those different things, then it doesn't matter if they're 50%. It's going to hit you like it's 1% or nothing, because you're doing so many different things outside of it to where their vibration no longer affects you. You affect them, right? So a lot of the times,
Because you become so high vibe that it rubs off them.
yeah, because the thing is, that's what people don't realize is, yes, they're energy vampires. They walk in and they drag the energy of the room down. That's one part of the story. And there's also people that are bringers of the light. They walk in the room and they lift everybody up, right?
Mhm.
And you can be that as well. And a lot of times we forget our power. We shrink because we realize, oh my gosh, they might affect us negatively, not realizing we're made of light. Well, we are within. Our light is always going to be stronger and brighter than the darkness around us, hand over fist, every single day. If we realize that we're light and we start shining our light and we start, and start basking in it versus being afraid that someone's going to affect us negatively, right? And it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. I mean, it's one of the things that, yes, do you have to protect yourself at first and do these practices and eventually be in a high vibration to where you realize, wow, I'm not even affected by people. I'm affecting people positively. I feel like it's a growth process in our spiritual path. But the very beginning, absolutely, I'm protecting myself, mindful of energy, mindful of environment, until I got to a point where, you become bigger than that. Then you start really living by what I believe ultimately your vibration becomes your protection, to where your daily vibration is what you focus on, because when you're in the right one, nothing else matters. They don't show up, they don't affect you, they don't drag you down, right? You're supported, you feel good, and it's almost like anything can happen and you're fine, right?
Yeah. As you were talking, some reason Viktor Frankl was coming to mind, the survivor of the Nazi oppression, right, in the concentration camps, and how he stayed in high vibration even in those conditions. He was able to find meaning when he was there. So I think that really we can stay in high vibrations even in the worst environments. Of course, we don't want to be in that situation, but it can be done, right? We've seen even Nelson Mandela when he was in jail, he stayed in high vibration when he was in jail, right? So it's it can be done.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things, is that it can be done. It takes a lot of inner work. It takes a lot of really seemingly hard work at first. That's what I'm saying, at first. Because at first we have a lot of baggage to unload and purge. But when it's done, it's done. I've got people that think that, healing is a lifelong thing. No, it doesn't have to be. I met so many people that I've helped, myself, and so many people that I've helped, where healing is a phase, right? Like you have a wound. You don't have a wound forever, unless you keep reopening the wound, and re-traumatizing it, right? If it done right, wounds heal. Yeah, there's scar, sure.
Even if it's really deep trauma, even if it's
absolutely, absolutely,
really,
yeah. I mean, and the thing is, here's the thing with trauma is, again, doesn't matter what the trauma is, right? Because I believe, and I've seen it, it can heal. It doesn't mean it never happened. It just means that the power that it has over us, it's disempowering and debilitating, no longer exists, right? And then we can move forward. And that's the goal. Doesn't mean you're never going to think about it for a second and be like, okay, that sucks or whatever. But that emotional, debilitating feeling that can cause you to go in a spiral, and it causes you to lose control of your emotions, and you're in a roller coaster. Now you have control. That can be gone, right? And I feel like a lot of times, people either don't have role models that have seen them been able to do that. They don't know it's possible. They've been told you have this forever and it's a life sentence, versus I've seen the opposite. Because anywhere you look, you'll find people that are examples of it, people that are there forever, and people that broke free from it and they're healed. There's always an example. And for me, I feel like when we start realizing that, our thoughts, our focus, our emotions, the time we spend on something, it creates a reality that we can actually take charge of our vibration and our life by choosing, consciously what we pour our energy to, whether it's mentally, emotionally, things that we do. Then one, it becomes empowering, and life starts to change, because the things that you don't want in your life, you stop feeding them. And the things that you do want in your life, you start pouring, conscious creation, loving attention to, and that's what happens and shows up. But yeah, I've seen it. I mean, I've seen people that have had lifelong, right? Lifelong trauma that they thought they could never heal, right? And of course, it takes doing the work. I'm not saying like, you don't have to do the work. It takes doing the work. And at the beginning, it can feel like hard work because you're making decisions that are like, okay, I'm going to stop doing this. I'm going to start doing this. And you're going against habits. Sure. You're going against identity and stories. Sure. Right. So it does feel like at the beginning you are going against, it's kind of like the way I look at it is like a rocket launching off, right? The first,
you really need to push
for going up. And then, and after it breaks through some of those barriers, then it's like an escape velocity kicks in, then you're way easier, right? So a lot of the times it's that initial start, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of
that comes from attitude, right? So what you're essentially saying is that we should have the right attitude towards our healing process.
Mindset, faith, surrender, attitude, absolutely. Outlook to where it can get better. Like, because I feel like our beliefs, like they can either keep us in prison or liberate us. So and our beliefs aren't permanent. If we weren't born into this world with these pre-installed beliefs, we acquired them through life. So if they can be acquired, right, and they can be developed, they can be edited and reframed. You know what I mean?
And I'm so glad you say that, Oliver, because I think right now in society, what we're seeing is a rise of victim consciousness. I don't know if you've noticed it, but I certainly have, and I've spoken to some guests who have seen it as well, that people are using victimhood as a way to gain attention. And I would like to hear your thoughts on this from an energetic perspective. How does it impact us, and why is it important to get over it?
Yeah, I mean, I have a love-hate relationship with the word victim because I feel like at times if someone's never given the tools and it's something systemic and it's designed to keep people in a way in that line of thinking without any resources,
genuine victims, right?
Then are they a victim, or they didn't have the resources, right? So for example, I've met so many people that are like, they think they're going crazy because they're roller coaster emotions. They go out there, everybody else affects them. They've tried everything else. Nothing works. Right. And they start seeing things, and they know the future. They can feel stuff. Their spiritual gifts goes on. They go to a doctor and people think, okay, you're crazy. Right. So from a certain lens, sure, things are judged and labeled through certain lens and certain viewpoints, right? But if you go through energetic, lenses of energy, everything changes. And that's the one thing that I feel like as a society, as a culture, we haven't really been aware of it. We've never been taught. It's not mainstream. Because when you realize how energy works, you realize that like not everything's so black and white, right? So if we're all energetic beings and we're being affected by other people's energies, right? And energy is one thing that affects us regardless of what we believe in. It can be passed on from generation to generation, right? These blocks, right? And you've tried everything. And if nobody's educated you on that, and you're not making progress because you don't know how to deal with it, then it might feel like you're helpless to the situations. That's why for me, I feel like awareness and education is so important, because a lot of times I met people that have had the same thing. They've come to me and they're like 60s, 70s, 80s, and they're like, Oliver, I've tried everything for 40, 50 years. Nothing has worked. I'm still here. Right. And then they try my stuff and it's the only, and things finally make sense and things work. And I'm not saying mine's the only thing that does it. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of other methods that do that as well. So people try it out and then it works for them. Right. I'm just speaking about mine, and what I've seen is like people try it out and they're like, wow, wish I knew this 40, 50 years ago. Right. And then they live the next chapter of their life and it's empowered. It's different. They're free. They're shining their light. They're happy. They've gotten through that glass ceiling that stopped them in the past. And I feel like it doesn't matter what people do. It's just that sometimes different things appeal to different people at different stages in their lives, and that gets them to the next level. For me, I just feel like it's really hard to look at the environment and the world, because yes, for sure, a lot of the times it seems like that. right? It seems like everyone's just like, it's suffering. And a lot of it, I feel like it's also lack of education. It's also lack of awareness. It's also
lack of role
tools,
models, because you mentioned earlier,
lack of role models, lack of a lot of those different things. So what would the world be if we had all of those?
Right.
It would be a different world. So for me, it's like when I look at the world and I look at people and I look at pain, I look at suffering, I don't see it as that's what it is. And that's what it's always going to be. The way I see it is this is what's happening because of the programming of the past, the tools of the past, the resources of the past is creating the now. The now is not, for me, it's not a reality. It's an illusion, right? Because reality is malleable. I look at now as byproduct of the past. I look at tomorrow as a byproduct of what we do now. And therefore, if people don't have the tools, energetic tools and the ways where they can raise their vibration and take care of themselves, then let me go do that, get it out into the world, and then tomorrow can be different, right? So I just see things not set in stone. I see things malleable. Things can change. Nothing's permanent. Things can change faster than people think. Sometimes people are closer than they think they are. They think they're far, but they're right there, right? So for me, I just believe that tomorrow can be better, and if I have the ability and the gift and support to be able to do that, then I will, right? So that's kind of like my stance on it.
Wow. Yeah, that's very hopeful, optimistic. Oh, that's perfect. That's exactly what
and the thing is, the hopeful and the optimistic comes from being able to experience so much darkness and pain and suffering in my life.
Yes.
Right.
So you've seen that it is possible. Yeah.
A lot more to where at times where I'm like, gosh, right. This is just crazy. Of why am I even doing this? To where you're just wishing it's a dream, but it continues on and on and on. So the biggest gift is I didn't break from that, and it taught me that that's what people can go through in real life, and probably even worse. So it also helped me, give me empathy. So that and that empathy allows me to stay longer in the darkness and the fire with somebody and bring them out. And not be afraid of it, because I've been there. I know what it's like, right? And for me, a lot of my work hasn't been. It's never the happy people. I mean, yeah, we do have people that come and they just want to grow, but they're not the majority of the people that we deal with. A lot of people that we deal with are in the darkest of the darks. It is the suicide attempts. It is the pain for 40, 50 years. It's the grief. It's the loss. It's the breakups. It's the debilitating diseases. We deal with the darkest of situations. So it's not all light. I can talk about optimism and hopefulness because I've seen and I have helped people go from that to light. And that's when I can say that's what's possible. But yeah, I mean, we're not 95% of our work is not around things that are happy and optimistic. They're the quite opposite, right? But we know what's possible. Therefore, we can help assist and create the space and the container to get people there, if they choose to.
Great. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Oliver, before I let you go, for our listeners who want to start working on their energy and start clearing out some initial blocks, do you have any tools that you can recommend they start off with?
Yes. So when it comes to blocks, I mean, honestly, the biggest things I tell people at first is try everything and anything, because you don't know what's going to work for you. For some people, it's crystals, and they buy crystals, right? And that works, right? For crystals, for example, I have them. I mean, so I have for example, I've got dark ones and I got these. So typically dark ones black tourmaline, smoky quartz, all these different dark types of crystals. What they do is imagine negative energy, right? Instead of you absorbing it and you now having to clear it, it goes to your crystal first. So it's your kind of like your first line of defense, right? It just goes in here first and it absorbs it so that you don't have to. So it's less strain on your energetic body, mental, emotional, physical body, so on and so forth. And then I have this crystal over here. Because typically crystals, you have to clear them. You got to put them under the sun or the moon.
Yeah.
So
you got to take care of your rocks.
Yeah, it can be cleansed, right? But I've got this fella, which is a citrine, right? Which carries the energy of the sun. And it's one of the crystals that you don't have to clear because it clears itself and it clears anything that's close to it. right? So for me, it's like a system of crystals of like, sure, you have some that absorb and you have some that clear. And I'm pretty sure I have some around here to where, so the way I look at it is absorbing, clearing, elevating. So you've got some that absorb, some of that absorb, some that clear, and then you have some that elevate vibration. So this one, for example, is a celestite, right? And what it does is that it brings forth energy from the angelic realm. So now I have, sure, if I'm in a humanistic space, that I'm absorbing things from this vibration.
Yeah.
I am clearing things from this vibration, but I'm not, but since I know it's a vibration game, that I want to make sure I'm in a higher vibration, they don't show up. Therefore, I also have stuff that elevate the vibration. And a lot of times, if you start thinking about that as a system, it exists. It exists, like, in the way I do things. You got to protect yourself, clear, and then raise your vibration. And it actually is applicable to anything that you do in life, right? If you're going into a meeting and they're very, very verbally, abusive, or they can affect you, or you're going to meet a family member that can trigger you, can you protect your energy? Can you do that?
Yeah, they say imagine a white bubble of light or something.
So there's lots of ways you can do it. Prayer. You can imagine sacred jump. People can imagine them being in a bubble, or pyramid, or multiple bubbles and with colors. And there's different things to where certain shapes and colors for some people like really help prevent outside energy from affecting them. So they're in that space to where, yes, you're protecting yourself, sure, but you're also knowing that after that interaction, are you doing self-care to release the things that you've absorbed, whether it's a salt bath, or you're journaling, or you're outside in nature, or you're listening to music, or you're dancing, all these things that, again, seem like they're not nothing, they're not spiritual, but they even though they're not spiritual because they're like, oh wow, everyone does it, or it's a normal thing. A lot of times, like in a lot of normal things that we have energetic benefits. It's because we don't know that it has. I mean, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Right. So
it's what works for you, right? Ultimately, it's what works for you. So you don't have to do like the textbook solutions.
Absolutely. It is what works for you. Yeah. It is. So definitely it's what works for you. It's what's sustainable. It's what you always wanted to do in the past. Like, as a kid, you love doing it, and it's just amazing. Right. And we just stop doing it because life gets busy. We have so many rules that stop us from doing it. But it's a lot of it is a lot of those things. And realizing that the way I look at it is, even if people never learned about energy, they never believed in crystals, they never believed in incense and all those different things, doesn't matter, because we were born with an affinity towards things that can take care of us energetically. Right, where we just never thought that it did the same thing. When people are like, oh, like, I love being around people and loving connection, they didn't realize that raises their vibration. People sometimes don't realize that, like, that we're equipped with it, we were gifted with it, we have it, we have it within us, to where, for example, somebody loves, as a kid, they just love hanging around people, and they're extroverted, right? And people are like, don't know why. There's a genetic reason for that. If you love being around people, then your heart is open. And when your heart is open, that in itself it's a different vibration than when your heart is closed.
Yeah, right? And you feel that, right? You feel
it, and therefore, when your heart's open, you're in a higher vibration. You're not knowing that because no one's explained to you. Oh yeah, when you're around people and you're laughing and you're connecting, your heart is open. And when your heart is open, that's where we manifest from. That's where a lot of our magic is. So you're in a higher vibration than when your heart is closed and you're afraid and you're hiding and you're fearful. It's a different, but no one explains that. But it has very real effects in our lives. So we're like, oh shoot, that's what happens when your heart is open and closed, right? So for me,
it's really about listening to your body and just. Those sensations will tell you what works for you and what doesn't work for you.
Absolutely. And a lot of the times it's when I've looked at this stuff, a lot of times it's the simple stuff that works.
It really is.
But a lot of times we get it confused because we think it's simple and we are looking for something fancier, but
like we have to go to a retreat or we have to,
Yeah. And those help, of course. I mean, they a lot of the times those moments where when I went to Sedona and I was like, let me go ahead and do all these things. I took myself out of the environment and I immerse myself in a different environment enough to stop the bleeding and enough to create momentum in another area, which I wanted, to give me clarity and away from every distraction. Sometimes those things, are needed. And I've done them several times in my life when it's needed. But those are the things, that you do either at the very, very beginning when there's a lot, or when you're going through a tough time in life, sure. But it gets to a point when you do all these practices that you might not need to do that. That now, since you've done it so many times in the past, the energy is just within you. You know how to revisit it. It doesn't even get that, that doesn't even spiral down that far anymore. It's just different.
Yeah. But you're saying that we can also kind of maintain it and find our own practices when we're home. Absolutely.
Because in the past, I thought I'm not going to be able to do this, access my gifts, be intuitive, have these things. I'm not going to be able to do it if I'm in Sedona. Sedona's the only place. I'm not going to be able to do any healings if I don't have any crystals, right? All these things that I, at the beginning, were my training wheels. Then I realized, what? We're all energy. And Sedona, it's not a place, it's a frequency. Therefore, if I figured out what it was, then I can recreate and revisit it when needed. So when I realized that, it changed everything, because I realized, wow, it's not a place. It's not the tool. It's that they house certain vibrations and frequencies that if we can house it, we learn how to, then we can recreate it, even if we're not there, if they don't have it. And that's a lot of, and another lesson was just pretty much owning our power, stepping into it, trusting ourselves, realizing that, so we have it within, we just maybe haven't been able to explore it, right?
So you can see energy, right? So does that make you psychic, or is that something different?
Psychic is a spiritual gift. I mean, people that when they see energy, feel energy, hear energy, know energy, I just feel like that's a byproduct of their third eye being open, right? Or their crown chakra being open, depending on where it flows. Psychic is it's one of the gifts that can occur when your third eye is open, right? But it's one of many. So somebody, because it depends, sometimes people, they're akashic and it comes through their crown and they know things. They know.
Yeah, there are 4 gifts that you write about in the book.
I think I wrote 5 plus a bonus
5.
one. And those are the primary ones. And then there's more, but those are the ones that are just kind of a little bit more of what I feel like people tend to or need to focus on first, and then all the other ones kind of start showing up afterwards. But psychic is one of them, and a lot, and psychic is more than just crystal balls and all that stuff.
Seeing into the future. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. It's deeper than that. It is you meeting somebody and you have this feeling in your stomach that a ball of anxiety because they might not be good for you. Right. Or it's your body giving you signs. It's you knowing things. It's you dreaming things and it comes true. It is you seeing somebody's auric field or light around them, or it's you seeing, people who will pass sometimes or communicate with them. These are all, a byproduct of psychic. It can be remote viewing, astral traveling. All these are psychic is it's a good term. It's a very broad term. A lot of things fall underneath it as well. But it's for me, it is just a good way to describe what happens when your third eye is not blocked and it's something that you can access,
Okay. So, I mean, those are gifts that you develop as you clear your energy and you tap into a high vibration.
And a lot of times, some of these gifts are already available. You already have them. People have them sometimes. They already have them. They just don't know this what it is, right? So it's not one of the things to where you need to a lot of times I have people that are born with it, or they come to me because it's out of control and they want to make sure it gets better, right? So it's not always sure. A lot of times they come to me so that they can help access it more or access it faster or access the better parts of it. But it's not I've seen it a lot of times to where it's sometimes it's just you're getting it and it's just a byproduct of, hey, it is you already tapping into it, and you just need a little help. You know what I mean?
Interesting. Well, Oliver, thank you so much. This has been tremendously insightful, and I'm sure that anyone who listens to this is going to benefit from our conversation. And I want to let everyone know about your new book, which is titled Spiritual Activator: 5 Steps to Clearing, Unblocking, and Protecting Your Energy to Attract More Love, Joy, and Purpose. It's available at all major bookstores and on Oliver's website, thespiritualactivator.com. Oliver, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Have a great rest of your day.
You too.